Rambo, can you hear me?
Thanks for the compliment. Appreciate it again.
Always. How you doing, friend?
I'm doing all right. Um, I want to talk about the goddess Minerva. You're talking about Rome. You just mentioned Rome, how Rome still appears to have maintained power. Well, I'm looking at the primary deities, the chief deities of Rome. If Rome is still in charge, then those deities are still being honored and worshipped. Well, in Rome, they had the Capitoline Triad, which are the three elite deities of Rome. I've talked about Jupiter. I've been talking about Jupiter because Jupiter was their chief deity. But the Capitoline Triad also included Juno, who's the consort and sister of Jupiter, and Minerva. Minerva is the Roman version of Athena in Greece. So since Shakespeare is a big theme now, they put Shakespeare on our consciousness. Well, this has to do with Athena and Minerva. But I just want to correct some things you said. You were talking about David Icke, and you're saying he's from Coventry.
That's where he played
They pronounce it
football.
Coventry. No, yeah, yeah. That's where he played. That was his first professional team. That's not his hometown. But his hometown is Leicester. Leicester City. He's actually one of their most. He's one of their celebrity fans. So this decode will also involve Leicester. So it's interesting that David Icke is connected to these two cities. So yeah, I just put up a post on gematryeffect.news, and the title is Athena Minerva, the Spear Shaker. So this is where the name Shakespeare came from. So William Shakespeare, most people who've looked into it, honestly, it's unlikely that William Shakespeare actually was the person who wrote that. There's probably several people, but Sir Francis Bacon is who most likely wrote most of what is accredited to William Shakespeare. And so the question is how Francis Bacon came up with the name Shakespeare. Well, that had to do with the fact that his muse, there are the nine muses in Greece. Uh, the muse that Sir Francis Bacon identified with was Athena. And Athena was known as the spear shaker. And I have a quote here. It says, to ancient Greeks, Athena was known as the spear shaker. They placed her statue on their temples, and when the rays of the sun would dance on her spear, it looked as if she were shaking it. Pallas Athena was the muse and inspiration of Sir Francis Bacon, author of the Shakespearean plays. Now, Athena to Rome is Minerva, but that is where Sir Francis Bacon got the term Shakespeare. It's a reference to the goddess Athena, Minerva to the Romans, who was one of the chief deities. So on December 8th, 2020, it was reported that William Shakespeare became the second Briton to receive the Pfizer vaccine outside of trial. So, I mean, right off the bat, like this community, we see that name Shakespeare, and it just looked William Shakespeare just looked ridiculous right off the bat. Like, I mean, how the rest of the world taking it seriously, it's sad, but so William Shakespeare is, as you know, he's Sir Francis Bacon, and those in England, and especially those who are fans of the Premier League football, this is not the first time they're seeing the name Shakespeare being thrown out in the news, which I guess should look ridiculous. I mean, it should be obvious that they're just not taking us seriously if they're So this is not the first. I mean, this is William Shakespeare who just got the vaccine that gets worldwide recognition. But this is not the first time. In England, or if you follow the Premier League, they've done this before with Shakespeare. So talk about the legacy of Richard III, the King Richard III. Richard III was one of William Shakespeare's first plays. That's one of his very first plays. It's a history. His plays were categorized comedy, tragedy, history. So one of Shakespeare's very first plays and one of his most popular histories was Richard III. And is based on a real life King Richard III of England. Now, there's a strong correlation. You've done stories on this. Back in 2016, Leicester City of the Premier League, they won the Premier League, and before the season started, the betting odds on Leicester City winning the Premier League was 5,000 to 1. So yeah, they won at 5,000 to 1 odds. And this correlates with Richard III. So in 2016, they actually put some bookmakers were put out of business, completely out of business after paying out for that. So it was considered one of the greatest upsets in the history of sports. The Leicester City story, it's a series of coincidences and miracles in part of a web that includes William Shakespeare and King Richard III. Leicester City's rise from underdog non-entity to champion coincided with the needle in a haystack discovery of the remains of King Richard III under a parking lot in the city of Leicester, directly underneath the letter R painted on the ground that indicated reserved parking. So there's a letter R on the parking lot for reserved parking. Richard III's body, his remains were directly under that R. I showed a link to the Wikipedia story. You can't make this stuff up. Well, apparently they have. And that's an even bigger miracle than the 5,000 to 1 odds of Leicester City winning the Premier League. Now, more coincidences is that Leicester City's team sponsor is King Power. And their name appears on their jerseys. And that's the stadium sponsor. And their logo is a crown. So they're wearing a crown on their jerseys. King Power is written on their jersey on the stadium. This king gets discovered and gets reinterred in Leicester Cathedral. And then they win the Premier League at 5,000 to 1 odds. It coincided with the discovery and reinterment of Richard III. Now, the poster child and protagonist of Leicester City is center forward Jamie Vardy, whose his own career story is a fairy tale in and of itself. So it's one fairy tale and miracle after another and coincidence. But he didn't his career did not take the trajectory that most elite soccer players do. They're usually identified at a young age as a prodigy, and they're developed. He was kind of thrown to the scrap heap, and he just miraculously just turned into a superstar. So he's a fairy tale in and of itself. His name is Jamie Vardy, but his middle name is Richard. So just like Richard III, his middle name happens to be Richard. So their unprecedented victory came in the 2015-2016 Premier League season. It started in 2015. Well, in the Latin cipher of Gematria, which is Jewish cipher of the Gematrinator, his full name, Jamie Richard Vardy, sums to 2015. So after leading Leicester to the miracle title, their Italian manager, Claudio Ranieri, was inexplicably fired. Like, now, why would you fire a manager who just pulled off what is considered one of the greatest upsets in sports history? Well, they fired him less than a year later. It made no sense. But you should understand Richard, you'll see why, because he was replaced by a completely unknown unheralded, unqualified, Craig Shakespeare. Now, I understand the whole Richard III saga. Now you know why they signed a manager named Shakespeare, because it's just, how anyone's, you think David Icke would mention this, because he's from Leicester, but no, David Icke took it seriously. He part of the way. So they hired Craig Shakespeare. I mean, this is old news for people who are familiar with the Premier League, but especially with Shakespeare back in the news, I think it's worth mentioning. So those of us we're aware of the scripted nature of sports. We understand why Craig Shakespeare was chosen. And Shakespeare, who is Francis Bacon, he wrote Richard III, and Leicester's championship narrative coincided with the Richard III reburial. And look at the gematria of Jamie Vardy. He's the poster child. He's the headline superstar for Leicester City. Jamie Vardy and Shakespeare. And it's a super match across 3 base ciphers. So, yeah, gematria confirms the ritual. So now you remember that Shakespeare is a reference to the muse of Francis Bacon, the Greek goddess Athena, who's known as the spear shaker. And the Greek capital Athens is named after the spear shaker Athena. So on December 8th of 2020, William Shakespeare got the Pfizer vaccine. On December 9th, there's a Leicester City player named Harvey Barnes. That's his birthday, which used to be listed as December 8th. They changed his birthday. His birthday used to be listed as December 8th, the same day that William Shakespeare got the vaccine. After William Shakespeare got the vaccine, they changed this. He plays for Leicester City. His name is Harvey Barnes. They changed his birthday. You've seen them do this on. It's across the board, Wikipedia and others. So his official birthday changed. It was always December 8th. Well, they said it was December 9th, right after Shakespeare got the vaccination. On December 10th, Leicester City hosted a team from Athens in the Europa League. Again, that's Athens. That's the patron goddess, is the spear shaker. And in that game, of course, Harvey Barnes, whose birthday was either December 9th or 8th, he scored in that game. And so again, we see the web that connects Shakespeare, the spear shaker, and Leicester City are at the middle of this. So, and another connection with Leicester, the city of Leicester, is that Francis Bacon, who's William Shakespeare, is believed, this is not official, but there's pretty concrete evidence pointing to the fact that his father is the Earl of Leicester, Robert Dudley. And the speculation he might have been the son of Queen Elizabeth. And that's too scandalous to admit, but it's very likely that Sir Francis Bacon was the son of Queen Elizabeth I. And his father was the Earl of Leicester. Just again, Leicester being associated with Shakespeare. Now here's a 153 code, and for this code, this is not my code. I have to give a special shout out to Anthony C. Davison. He's helped me on a lot of other decodes. He's a very good decoder. Anthony C. Davison, he came up with the 153 decode on this. He lives in England. He's actually, I hope he doesn't mind me saying, he was born in Leicester, so he's very familiar with this. He did a decode. I gave a link to his Twitter. He does some good decodes. I'm trying to get him on the Free to Find Truth platform, but I think he'd be quite popular there. But this is his code. This is a 153 code that he discovered with Leicester. So if you look at the name Earl of Leicester, who's the father of Francis Bacon, sums to 153. Leicester City sums to 153. Richard III, spelled out, sums to 153. Richard III was reinterred because they found his body in a parking lot, and then they gave him a formal king's burial in Leicester Cathedral. So the date that he was buried in Leicester Cathedral was March 26th, 2015. Leicester City clinched the title on May 2nd, 2016, which was a span of 1 year, 5 weeks, and 3 days. This 153. So that's a major number. Richard III, 153. Leicester City, 153. Earl of Leicester, 153. Richard III, his birthday is October 2nd. So from the day that Leicester City clinched the title to Richard III's birthday was 153 days. Now, again, that's not my decode. That is Anthony C. Davison's decode. Very, very good decoder. And, he also added, this is him as well, we're not done. Leicester City's mascot is called Filbert Fox. Filbert Fox sums to 153 as well. Jesuit order sums to 153. And also I've said how Zeus to the Greeks is Jupiter, to the Romans, the chief deity of Rome. The Lincoln Memorial is designed after the Temple of Zeus in Olympia. That's homage to Zeus and Jupiter in the United States Capitol. And Abraham Lincoln sitting in the chair, that's Jupiter. But there's a picture I put in my post of Filbert Fox outside the Lincoln Memorial, which is actually it's actually a version of the temple to Zeus. But there's Filbert Fox. He came to D.C. and posed outside there. So another 153 is Sagittarius. Sagittarius comes to 153. I've spoken to a significant Sagittarius because the ruling planet of Sagittarius is Jupiter. Jupiter is who the Rome venerates. Harvey Barnes, who I mentioned, his birthday originally was December 8th when Shakespeare got the vaccine and they changed it to 9th. Then the next day he scored against Athens. Well, I showed a picture here of he scored a goal just to show how conscious some of these people are, at least with the zodiac. The symbol for Sagittarius is the archer, the bow and arrow. Well, I showed part of a goal celebration he had last season. He doesn't do this after every goal, but after he scored one goal, he actually mimed an archer firing an arrow from a bow. And what he's doing is he's paying homage to Sagittarius because he's a Sagittarius. And again, Sagittarius is 153. So some of these players are aware of things like astrology and stuff. He clearly is. Now, 153 is an interesting number because the date 153 is 15-3 is the Ides of March. And that is when Julius Caesar was assassinated. Now, Julius Caesar is related to William Shakespeare because besides Richard III, it is Julius Caesar is William Shakespeare's most popular history. It's Julius Caesar and Richard III. Those are his two most popular histories. So there's another Shakespeare connection with 153. 15th March, the Ides of March, when Julius Caesar was assassinated. Julius Caesar's birthday is July 12th. That's written 712, July 12th. William Shakespeare's birthday is listed as April 26th. And William Shakespeare got the Pfizer vaccine on December 8th. So from William Shakespeare's birthday 2020 to William Shakespeare getting the vaccine is 7 months, 12 days. That's 7/12, like the birthday of Julius Caesar, which is, again, that's related to Shakespeare. Now, Leicester City's a miracle championship manager was Italian Claudio Ranieri, and he was born in Rome. But I put Ranieri's picture next to Julius Caesar, and he looks an awful lot like Julius Caesar. So I don't know if he's some kind of Caesar symbol, but he does look an awful lot like Caesar. And Gematria actually does match them up because the name Claudio Ranieri, 139, in the simple cipher ordinal, matches Julius Caesar, 139. And these happen to look alike. So, and also House of York, because Richard III, he was the last king from the House of York. House of York sounds to 139. And also the owner of Leicester City, he died in a helicopter crash. I mean, you covered that extensively. And there were 4 other people, the pilot, the owner, and 3 other people. So there were 5 people who died in that crash, 5 dead in helicopter crash. So 139, just like Claudio Ranieri 139, Julius Caesar 139, House of York. So yeah, there's some synchronicity there. Also, the number 224, the spear shaker, is 224. The manager, Shakespeare, who pretty ridiculous hire just because of his name, but his full name is Cray Robert Shakespeare. It matches the spear shaker 224. And the full name of the Leicester City owner who died in the helicopter crash was Vishai Srivadanaprava, sums to 422, that's direction 2224. An interesting thing about the helicopter crash as well, because Richard III's body was found in a parking lot. The helicopter crashed in the parking lot outside the stadium, so they stayed true to that. Now, when you think of helicopter crashes, what's the most famous helicopter crash you can think of? It was Kobe Bryant, right? And we all remember the date of that. It's January 26th. Well, January 26th, it happens to be the birthday of the current Leicester City manager, who's Brendan Rodgers. So, again, there's a 126 helicopter crash connection. There's Leicester City at the middle of it. I showed a picture of just how elite the Leicester City owner was. He's with Prince William and Prince Charles playing polo. So that's how high up in the pecking order he is. He gets to rub shoulders with Prince William. But again, there's that name William again. That's another commentary of the name William. Prince William Shakespeare. And again, with the connections with royalty, again, Leicester City sponsors King Power with a crown on it. So this royalty connection. On May the 2nd, 2015, that actually was the first birthday of Princess Charlotte of Cambridge. That's Prince William's daughter. Now, yeah, so again, Leicester coinciding with royalty. That is, right? Another famous William is the singer of Black Eyed Peas fame. It's will.i.am. That's William. I find it interesting that will.i.am's birthday is the Ides of March. Then again, William, Ides of March, another theme. So I threw him in there because he fits the theme. William and the Ides of March. It's will.i.am. So there's also the owl symbol. The symbol of Minerva is the owl. Now, Minerva is not, when you have these symbols, it's not black and white. Like, oh, this is evil, this is good, this is evil. Like, this is God, this is Satan. So a lot of these symbols, like the owl, Minerva represents wisdom primarily. Wisdom, knowledge, and it has positive attributes, but well, a lot of these, at least they'll take symbols of all kinds and they'll pretty much demonize it. So if they've made Minerva into something demonic, that's really not, doesn't mean Minerva is demonic. They've demonized, and that's how symbols are. They can have more than one meaning. Somebody will take a symbol and attach their own meaning to that symbol. But the Illuminati, Albert...
Rambo, the commercial break snuck up on us. We'll be right back, everybody. Sit tight.
Okay.
Censorship and regulation is becoming an ever-growing problem in today's modern media. From the mainstream to YouTube and Google, the information you're looking for is buried by official narratives and propaganda. This is why TFR is 100% uncensored, unregulated, and listener-supported. The shows on TFR are not micromanaged by the station, and our hosts are free to speak their minds however they please. As such, the views and opinions expressed on our station are of those who make them. If you happen to hear anything offensive on TFR, please send us an email to toughtitty@tfrlive.com, and we'll be happy to tell you that we really don't give a damn. We stand for freedom of speech and non-censorship. If you also stand for free speech, you can go to tfrlive.com/signup and sign up for a TFR supporter pass and help us in our mission to keep the airwaves uncensored and unregulated. TFR Live, your uncensored and unregulated protection from deception.
This is a Fox News alert. Let's get back to work. I'm Lisa Lacera. Those were the words of Vice President Mike Pence as he reconvened a joint session of Congress to proceed with certifying the election results after the Capitol building was stormed by violent protesters, forcing Pence and members of Congress to evacuate. Fox's Jill Nato has more live in D.C.
Lawmakers are back at work to certify the results of the Electoral College and validate Joe Biden as president. Protesters backing President Trump have left the Senate and House chambers a mess, broken glass and debris everywhere, but Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell says
they tried to disrupt our democracy. They failed.
Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer is calling for the protesters to be prosecuted for the damage done. One woman was shot and killed at the Capitol, and Congresswoman Liz Cheney tells Fox scores of police officers were hurt. Right now, federal agents and National Guard troops are joining Capitol Hill Police, hoping to maintain order. Lisa?
Jill, former President Obama said what happened at the Capitol was incited by President Trump. In a statement he wrote in part, history will rightly remember today's violence incited by a sitting president who, he writes, has continued to baselessly lie about the outcome of a lawful election at a moment of great dishonor and shame for our nation. British Prime Minister Boris Johnson called images of the violence disgraceful scenes. After the protest, the mayor of Washington, D.C. taking action.
Mayor Bowser ordering a curfew in the nation's capital from 6 p.m. Wednesday through 6 a.m. Thursday.
No one is allowed to be outside in public places other than essential workers.
Police used tear gas and percussion grenades to disperse protesters from the Capitol grounds ahead of the curfew.
Fox's Steve Rappaport. America is listening to Fox News.
This is Truth Frequency Radio.
The wicked one, obviously under heavy Masonic influence.
Condition orange. Condition orange. Situation Delta in effect. Please enter your agent number now, followed by the hash key.
We have to create culture. Don't watch TV. Don't read magazines. Don't even listen to NPR.
Time comes when silence is betrayal.
More for themselves and less for everybody else. But I'll tell you what they don't want. They don't want a population of citizens capable of critical thinking. They don't want well-informed, well-educated people capable of critical thinking. They're not interested in that. That doesn't help them.
Think for yourself. Question authority.
This code has been compromised.
All right, we're back, Truth Seeker. We're going to let Rambo finish up his brilliant decode, and then we'll be taking your calls the rest of the night. Before we go back to Rambo, I just want to read a quick piece of this reporting, because I see something very interesting about this in regards to the events that took place today in D.C. CNN writes, the stunning display of insurrection was the first time the U.S. Capitol had been overrun since the British attacked and burned the building in August of 1814. Well, 1814 was 206 years ago in a few days, right? So it's the incident in 1814 was 206 years and days ago. This event was 206 days after Trump's birthday. Trump's birthday, June 14th to January 6th, is 206 days later. And if you counted the full span of days, you could say it was a span of 207 days, just like how technically from 1814 to 2021 is 207 years. But again, you guys, this stuff is not an accident, and it shows you just how well the stage is set. And again, it reminds what William Shakespeare once said. The world is a stage. So with that said, let's get back to Rambo so he can finish his decode. You're back on, friend.
No, thanks. Yeah, so another thing is that we just had the Jupiter-Saturn Great Conjunction. It's every 20 years, but this year is a little bit more phenomenal. William Shakespeare is connected to the Great Conjunction because the last time that the Jupiter-Saturn Great Conjunction occurred this close to Earth was in the year 1623, which is the year that Shakespeare's first folio was released. So Shakespeare is also related to the Great Conjunction. That's why they rolled out William Shakespeare to get the vaccine. And this whole vaccine thing has to do with the Great Conjunction. Yeah, they're using astrology, definitely. And as I've said, I've said this repeatedly, Great Conjunctions, their effect is most vividly seen in the United States, where presidents elected in conjunction year elections, which is every 20 years, either die in office or survive assassination attempts. Now, this relates to Shakespeare again because one of his most popular histories is Julius Caesar, which has to do with the death in office of a leader. So Shakespeare, Julius Caesar, these are themes that we may see, especially coming off of conjunction, election year. We might see more of these connections. It seems to be a theme. So just to wrap it up, I'll just talk about the owl symbol. It's the symbol of Minerva. Minerva, again, is the Roman version of Athena, who's the spear shaker. The symbol of Minerva is an owl. And again, they take a symbol and they will give it a negative connotation. That doesn't mean that symbol is exclusively negative. Athena and Minerva usually have a positive. They've just been demonized by these people. So you'll see the owl out there. Adam Weishaupt, who founded the Bavarian Illuminati, the name he gave to apprentices in the Bavarian Illuminati was Minervals. That's after Minerva. And he liked to use the Minerva symbol of the owl. So a Minerval was a Illuminati apprentice. And so you'll see that symbol in the road patterns that surround the Capitol. You can get Google Earth or just do a web search for aerial view of the Capitol or put owl surrounding Capitol aerial view. Or a search like that, you'll see it. I put an image on that in my post, is where you see, it's clear, this is clear. It's an owl, this is intentional. It's an owl, it is surrounding the Capitol. And the position of the Capitol is in the throat of the owl. So it's as if the owl has swallowed the Capitol building. And the Capitol and the Capitol dome actually has a statue of freedom, which is the goddess Columbia. So it's actually two goddesses. So they're taking the owl goddess is actually swallowing the goddess Columbia. Now you'll see that same thing with Bohemian Grove. I think most people are familiar with Bohemian Grove, where they have the stone owl, 30 or 35-foot stone owl, where they do the cremation of care every midsummer. And that stone owl, again, is the goddess, but care is the sacred feminine principle. So like Venus, care, you'll see the numbers in Gematria line up. It's emotion, empathy, love. Venus is a goddess of love. So they're actually sacrificing the goddess to the owl goddess. Just like they do with the Capitol Dome, they do it at Bohemian Grove as well. And again, Bohemian Grove takes us back to Shakespeare, because the theme or the motto, whatever you want to call it, of Bohemian Grove Club is "Weaving spiders, come not here." That's from William Shakespeare's A Midsummer Night's Dream, because that ritual, cremation of care, occurs in midsummer. So there's a Shakespearean connection there too. Also, in the owl is seen. It's the nickname of the soccer team, football we call it, Sheffield Wednesday, and their home ground is Hillsborough, which is infamous for the 1989 Hillsborough disaster, where 96 fans of Liverpool died in what is the worst sports disaster in British history. That happened at Hillsborough. But part of that was the owl symbol, because Sheffield Wednesday's, their nickname and their symbol, their logo is an owl. And that's Hillsborough. Now, Jamie Vardy, who's the superstar of Leicester City, he's actually from Sheffield. He's actually from Hillsborough. He grew up in Hillsborough. So there's all these things that seem connected. Now, where we most recently saw the owl symbol, again, was at the Nashville, Tennessee, Christmas Day bombing. And I showed a picture of that. It really stood out for me as soon as I saw it. There's these Hooters, this big Hooters sign for the restaurant chain Hooters, which is an owl reference. It's also, there are also a lot of these goddess, sacred feminine symbolism going on as well, because the dome is a architectural representation of the sacred feminine. The dome can be a womb, or a dome can be a breast. That's what the Capitol dome, which the owl is swallowing. So Hooters is also a euphemism for breasts, as well as, a reference to an owl, but that's the same thing as a dome. So there's some of that. It's like the cremation of care, where you're killing the sacred feminine, which is care, love, empathy. That's what's at the root of a lot of these rituals. So so the owl symbol showed up again in Nashville. So just one last thing with the Ides of March and Leicester City's connection. The English Premier League, they don't allocate. The games are played Saturday, Sunday, and then there's a Monday night game, which they learned that from the Americans, part of the American marketing strategy, Monday Night Football. But they don't decide that until maybe a month before, who will play Monday, who will play Saturday, who will play Sunday. So I just looked at the schedule. I wanted to see if there are any games the Ides of March. And the Ides of March in 2021 will be Monday. And I look at the schedule, and I see Leicester City is hosting Sheffield United. That's a different team from Sheffield. And to me, based on this decode, I would be pretty surprised if Leicester City are not allocated that Monday Night Football on the Ides of March, given their Shakespearean connection and just the whole theme of the conjunction, death of a leader. I showed the schedule. They haven't decided yet who plays when, but I'm pretty sure Leicester City will be given Monday night, the Ides of March, to host Sheffield United. I also suspect that I think they want to give the Premier League to Leicester City this season. That's my prediction. I think Leicester City are going to win the Premier League this season. So yeah, that's my decode for now. But these are the themes you're seeing: Shakespeare, the death of a leader, Julius Caesar, the Roman goddesses, Jupiter, Minerva. These are themes that are ongoing in multiple events.
Well, brilliant work as always, Rambo. Really appreciate it. And I'm sure the sports fans will appreciate the prediction as well. So keep our eyes peeled.
Yeah. No, I appreciate it. Thank you.
You're welcome. All right, you have a good night.
All right, you too.
All right.